Good morning. Welcome, everyone. So excited to have this conversation and have you all here today in our first installment of what we've learned, Lessons on DEI. Today, we're really going to dig in around employee resource groups, or ERGs. Can advance the slide, thanks.
Good morning, everybody.
So on today's agenda, we're going to really work through kind of just an introduction, kind of talking through a brief history of ERGs. What are ERGs really? What does that stand for? How did they start? We'll have a poll for some interactivity, and then we'll kind of talk about, why ERGs? Why is this our starting point with this conversation? What's so important about an ERG organizationally? Then we'll kind of jumping into a couple of the lessons that we've learned, and an open discussion. We'll always be taking a look in the chat. Really excited for all of you to be here today. We really want you to be engaged. So if there's not something that we cover, please feel free to send questions through the Q&A, which you can do anonymously, but you can also write questions in the chat, and we will be monitoring that and engaging there as well. So for brief introductions, I'm Lisa Alvarado, Managing Director at Holistic. I also run our learning and development arm of the business, as well as working on a lot of client engagements. My background's in HR and diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as I have graduate education in the historic study of race, gender, and ethnicity that really informs so much of this impactful, amazing work that we do. Joined by our wonderful CEO and founder, Tom.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Alexander. I'm the CEO and founder of Holistic. It's great to be here with you all. Super excited about this. ERGs, over the course of the 4 years of Holistic, have grown in the importance in the workforce and the amount of time that we spend on them. And we've really had a lot of fun, and I think learned a lot in terms of kind of how to interact with ERGs. And so we're super excited to have this event and to have you all here, and we really appreciate your taking the time to join us. Khadijah and Aaron, do you want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Waddles. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a lead consultant at Holistic. I'll be interacting with you all in the chat. So if you have any questions that come up for you during the course of this webinar, feel free to send them to me. We'll get you some answers, but we're really excited for you all to be here and share with you what we've learned about ERGs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Khadijah. I'm the lead business development associate here at Holistic. I'll be moderating the deck. I'm so excited to have you all. Thank you for showing up. We're excited to share these resources with you. Just keep in mind if there is anything that you missed. If you're taking notes, we'll be sending this up post the event along with the transcript in case you have issues hearing or anything like that. So get back to us shortly and enjoy.
I see we're already getting questions, which is super exciting. So keep them coming. We're going to answer them. We'll answer them in the chat. We'll answer them live. We're going to make this really as interactive as we possibly can.
So we're going to jump in and do a little introduction to who we are organizationally at Holistic. We really endeavor to help our clients and partners build diverse, inclusive, really vibrant workforces. And in these organizations, there are so many components to this. This is, we utilize data as kind of that starting place, that place in which we are delving in to really truly understand the employee experience and what's going on as we work strategically with our clients to come up with a plan for what diversity and equity and inclusion mean to their organization and how it manifests. And one of the biggest places for that that's foundational are ERGs. Employee resource groups are really foundational and a lifeblood of many organizations. And it's so many essential elements that are involved in the DEI strategy of an organization. It's a place where not only some of the most diverse and representative folks are, housed in an organization, but it's also a place where there's a lot of thought, energy, and empathy being put into the experiences of others, and a place that is a great partnership to those in leadership and those individuals who are making business goals, strategic goals around DEI. And so that's why it's so important that we really start with employee resource groups as a piece of this puzzle. So I'm going to go through a brief history of employee resource groups and how they really came to be. When we think about employee resource groups today in organizations, they're sometimes called ERGs. Sometimes we hear them being called BRGs, business resource groups. And that's really endemic of showing how instrumental they are in setting and helping to drive business goals that are inextricably linked to DEI goals. So the beginnings of those are really in the late 1960s, started first at Xerox. So Xerox is located in Rochester, New York, in upstate New York. And we know that this climate and this period of American history was really wrought with a lot of social unrest around race. Race riots in Rochester, New York in the 1960s really created a time where attention was being paid to the experiences of Black employees, not just professionally, internally at Xerox, but externally as well. And so despite Xerox having that progressive hiring program that was, really taking into account hiring a more diverse slate of individuals, these individuals, once inside, they really were internally facing quite a bit of discrimination. So, in the year, actually was by the time it was totally conceptualized and fully founded and put together in 1970 is the year that Xerox employees, along with support of their CEO, launched the first National Black Employee Caucus. And this created a space for Black employees to really find camaraderie, support, a place where they had that not just psychological safety, but physical safety organizationally, and they could come together and determine, what are the best ways they could support each other to navigate an environment that was not always totally ready to receive them, was not always inclusive, right? Anytime we know we've got a group of first, people who are integrating an organization, or they've moved away from a traditional hire and done something differently, it's so inherently important to create systems of support and resources for these individuals. So close behind Xerox, we see this happening at Xerox with Black Women's Leadership Caucus. So Xerox took no time to really recognize that if Black employees generally, in this particular instance, are having a disparate experience, then intersectionally, what's going on and what can we do to create that support and that push and help propel forward the careers of our Black women. And so that was the founding of that Black Women's Leadership Caucus. And some other ERGs that were founded quite early, Hewlett-Packard is known and recognized in 1978 for founding GLEN, the Gay and Lesbian Employee Network, and that's known as the first LGBT Pride Business Impact Network organizationally that we know of. So I'll take a look at the chat. We've got so many great things going on here. Avery says at ZS, we call our groups IDGs, right? So inclusion and diversity groups. So really embedding into the name, the mission and the work and what we hope that these groups are going to help continue to propel forward organizationally.
Yeah, and what I love about that is the customization, right? Like every organization can make their ERGs so reflective and emblematic and supportive of what they're trying to accomplish. And we, of course, we know ZS really well here at Holistic. And so they've done an awesome job of kind of empowering and fueling their IDGs. But even the name is a way of kind of customizing it. And what I'm struck about the history as we move on to the poll here in a second, but what I'm struck about the history is that these things haven't been around for 1,000 years. These are like, well, I'm old, so in my lifetime, developments, but they're in the last 50 years, this concept kind of came to fruition. And so it's exciting because it's relatively new. And of course, a lot of the energy around these groups, the proliferation of them has blossomed in the last 5 to 10 years. So it's a very new concept, but also it sort of underscores the importance of these matters, that even in the last 50 years, we've needed these groups to level the playing field for folks. So we got a poll open and we want you to answer the poll. In the meantime, I'm going to ask that we move on to the next slide. So go ahead and give the poll an answer. And we're gonna see I can see the results popping up here on my screen. Do you all see the results coming in? All right, very exciting. And if you have an answer that's not on here, we want you to put it in the chat. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing organizationally that's not listed here you can just pop it into the chat and we'll talk about it. This technology, by the way, is totally incredible that you can run a real-time poll for nearly 60 people and get all these responses. It's kind of a moment where you can reflect on just how powerful some of these tools are as well, which is nice. So it looks like garnering interest from the employee base is the winner, but that all three of these choices have a pretty strong level of support. You can see that nothing is below 25%. Of course, we'll be talking about all of these. Lisa, are you surprised at all at these poll results?
No, I'm really not. I think that in ERGs, one thing we recognize, whether this might be garnering interest from employees to kind of take part and participate once an ERG is founded. I'd even say it's really tough to get folks into positions of leadership in ERGs, because we'll get to this a little later, but a lot of these are volunteer positions, and it's a heavy lift. And making sure that we've got enough folks who are willing to kind of really engage, lean in, and raise their hands can be tough.
Sure. And garnering interest in terms of people running the ERGs is popping up in the chat a little bit in terms of challenges that folks are facing that weren't listed on the poll questions, but that they wanted to raise up. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit. And of course, the money component of it, which we'll get to in a few recommendations, is certainly designed to help that challenge quite a bit. All right, so let's move on to the purpose of ERGs. This is kind of a framing comment. This is Holistic's philosophy around why ERGs need to exist. And we have a couple of blog posts about this that we'll share with you all coming out of this event. And we've been out there on these kind of three reasons. The first is around leveling of the playing field. There are populations in the workplace and in society who are underrepresented, underserved, marginalized in one fashion or the other. They're facing an unlevel playing field. And particularly in the workplace, that's not fair. And so one of the main purposes of ERGs is to level the playing field for employees from those marginalized populations. Make sure they're having access to resources, make sure they're having access to safe spaces, make sure they're having access to opportunities within the organization. The second is to share lived experience, internally and externally. If you take, for example, Black employee resource groups, there's a tremendous opportunity to share the lived experience within the group as well as external to the group. And so what we're talking about here is safe spaces to discuss challenging issues, places to celebrate. We just had Black History Month, which is a tremendous reason and opportunity for celebration. And also sharing that culture with the rest of the organization is a key focus of employee resource groups. And the third reason, and this is one actually that I think we have kind of added to our list over the past few years, is to look out for opportunity for people who share the lived experience as the people within the employee resource group from outside the company to do business with the company. So I'll give you an example. We worked with Feeding America for a while, and we were working with them on their ERGs. And employees within the Asian employee resource group, within the Hispanic employee resource group, felt very strongly that they wanted to make the services of Feeding America accessible to the populations in the United States that shared their lived experience. And this was a really powerful concept for us. The idea that from within your role, you could use your ERG to advance the business interest and make sure people who shared your lived experience had an opportunity to connect with you and to connect with your organization. Here's the thing. If your ERG can't meet, I would say at least two, if not all three of these standards, it really doesn't need to be an ERG. And we'll talk about that in a minute in terms of what to do if you kind of find yourself in a situation where you have an ERG that's not an ERG. But our point is that any ERG should be able to, in seriousness, have part of its mission be accomplishing each of these three elements. So I think we're going to move forward actually into the 8 lessons that we have.
So for the first lesson we have today, You don't need an ERG for everything. And so it kind of seems like a simple kind of, well, obviously, we've talked about ERGs to this point, and to Tom's points, the previous things, it's an affinity group that it's for someone who shares common experience. So naturally, we know employee engagement is so important organizationally, and there are many ways that we can get employees engaged and involved. Sometimes it's coming together on shared interest. You might have, folks who like to play in a volleyball league, people who have pets or have certain interests, love to travel, right? Things like that will frequently become, we've seen organizations create those under the buckets of an employee resource group. And as we've said, and some of the ones we named historically, they originally were called affinity groups, morphed into the name of ERGs. It was about someone's lived experience and personal identification. So more than something that I like to do, or I might want to do, or I choose to do, but really baked into who I am, right? Like I can't choose not to be a woman of color. Someone else doesn't choose, or, their sexual orientation or other portions of their identity. And the reason that it's important to kind of make these distinctions are, it's manifold. When you're talking about employee resource group, the idea is that this group is going to be well resourced. They are going to create the resources that help to carve out and create those moments of community, camaraderie, and support, specifically for those individuals organizationally who fit whatever identification that is that they hold. So first and foremost in the ERG, but then organizationally, that ERG becomes a mouthpiece, a voice, an advocate for other individuals organizationally who may not be a member of their ERG, but share those same identifications. And so that's where that's something quite disparate and different than someone, we've got a group for pets, or we've got a group for whatever, because organizationally outside of the community, the support, the socialization, all those awesome things that come out of an ERG that you certainly can do around a shared, pastime, like being a pet owner. Organizationally, when you come to work, being a pet owner is not going to have any impact, positively or negatively, on your ability to gain mentorship, gain support, and be well resourced in your role, to matriculate through an organization and gain opportunities for promotion and access to resources. So those are things that we know some of the identifications that we hold and have naturally have and can and continue to impede progress of certain groups across the entire employee experience, from hire to retire or fire, right? So those are some things. So one thing that we say kind of as an action item for this is to really audit your current ERGs and determine if any of them should be split into multiple groups or eliminated, or, and even if it's not about eliminating, it might be, just changing the nomenclature. Like this is a club, this is something that's a little bit more of a social function and less of the type of function of what we're hoping for however you call or you determine your ERGs organizationally. Anything else
this,
to add?
just to echo this, a lot of this stuff is about kind of like organizational prioritization. There's some things in the chats, and you'll see that I answered a question about a kind of organizational prioritization. And so when an organization deems something worthy of being an ERG, what they're really saying is that it ascribes to those aforementioned elements that we talked about before. And so this isn't just about kind of organizational functions. This is about the capacity for the organization to put forth its priorities and to make sure that it's honoring the lived experience of those people for whom ERGs are essential and necessary. And so these can be tough conversations, right? I mean, going to, like, I wrote a blog post a couple of weeks ago that we published that says, I know you love your dog. My dog is right here, so I'm gonna ask her to cover her ears. I know you love your dog, but she doesn't deserve an ERG. And going to a group of pet owners and saying, I know that you have your ERG and that you've been having a lot of enjoyment with it. We want to reclassify it. We want to talk about it a little bit differently within the organization. That's not necessarily an easy conversation, but for us, it's one that's necessary so that you can honor the other ERGs and the lived experience of the folks within them. Let's move on to the next lesson that we've learned. which is around money. This is one of the big ones, and we previewed this before the event, but you got to pay your ERG lead. So we did a poll. I put up a poll on LinkedIn recently and about should you pay your ERG leads? And there was like 4 choices. It was like, yes, it should be a fixed rate. Yes, I'm not sure how much to pay them. Yes, it should be based on performance. And then the last one was no. And so that was dumb of me to include no as a choice, because who's going to answer that poll and say no? I thought maybe like 1 or 2 people would do it. Like maybe somebody who was in charge of the money for an organization, but nobody, not one single person who responded to the poll said, no, you shouldn't pay your ERGs. And it just got me thinking that there's almost universal agreement that ERG leads should be paid. And I think, if we kind of ask this group, almost everybody here would agree that ERG leads should be paid. But the crazy thing, Lisa, is that in our work, we've seen like 10%, if that, of organizations are actually paying their ERG leads. So like you talk about a disconnect, here you have universal agreement on the part of the workforce that people should be paid for something. And then you have a very, very, very small percentage of organizations that have actually been able to do it. And, LinkedIn announced that they were going to pay their ERG leads, I think last year, and they got an enormous amount of attention and credit for it. Like it's still very novel when an organization pays an ERG lead. And I'm just kind of wondering, what are your thoughts about why there's such a disconnect between organizations paying their ERGs and the organizations that have actually done that?
Great question in the chat, Kesha. Kessa says that some of my ERGs do not perform equally. How do you measure performance to support bonus or additional pay for ERGs? So we'll definitely get to this, but the answer is structure, right? In being set up, is this the type of things that similarly to a club, you just go, who's interested and raise your hand? Or organizationally, part of that support by leadership that we talked about is one of the 3 main tenets necessary to starting an ERG is you're going to be well resourced and supported. You're going to have a budget. You're going to have expectations. The same ways that we have company goals, OKRs or KPIs, you are going to, as an ERG, have those as well, because I'd hope that the organization that has ERGs has organization-wide DEI goals, and those should be directly connected to the ERG. So there's an obvious understanding of what's the level of expectation, how they feed into the larger picture organizationally around driving DEI. And the measurement, as you have something that's measurable and scalable, then you can make a determination about the expectations and level setting on, certain groups kind of taking off and other ones kind of petering out and not having the same impact.
Yeah, and so there's tons of questions coming in about how to actually do this if you want to pay ERG leads. And so I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts that we've developed at Holistic that are very specific, but there's a lot of opportunity to customize this for your organization. But here are our recommendations. First of all, we recommend a flat rate payment, not a percentage of compensation and not a stipend based on performance, but a fixed rate payment for an ERG lead based off of the size of the organization and the expectations. We've actually built a calculator, which we'll share with you all after the event, where you kind of pop in a few numbers about your organization, and you'll be able to calculate sort of what our recommendation would be for payment. But we're also going to have a special offer at the end of this event. We'll talk with you about how we can help you come up with the number, because the number is hard to figure out, but it is important. Here's why we like it to be flat rate. If you do it based off of percentage of compensation, or like if you do it as a percentage of your compensation, then by definition, you're rewarding higher compensated employees more. And since we already know that at the higher ranks of organizations, they tend to be less diverse. In fact, that's part of the reason for ERGs is that we're trying to diversify the higher levels of our organizations. We don't want to perpetuate an inequity in that regard. Similarly, we don't really like this pay for performance type of thing, because we often see scenarios where you get into a very strong debate over how well the performance is. So if you do want to do it as like a performance-based bonus thing, then it's really important to have a very strong structure for how that's going to be measured. And what we would just basically like to measure is effort. how many people are coming, how many events did you do, things like that. Just the basic measurements would fuel kicking in that compensation if you want to go in that regard. So a pretty low bar in terms of earning the things. What you do not want to do is end up in a position where organizationally you say you're going to pay ERG leads, and then somehow, based off of the mechanics of how you set it up, they're not getting the full payment, or they're not getting a fair payment or anything like that. It's tough. You don't want to do that, because that's almost even worse than not paying them in the first place, is somehow shortchanging them in terms of the payment. Also, this is not a place where you should be, kind of too cute by half in terms of the payment. This shouldn't be a payment in equity that will materialize in the future. This definitely shouldn't be a payment in the forms of like professional development opportunity. We're talking about American dollars that you can spend in stores being added to their paycheck. And the last thing that I would say is we recommend a quarterly payment rather than something that's added to your paycheck every month. And here's why. We don't want our ERG leads to be in those roles forever. And when they leave and they stop getting that payment, we don't want it to be seen as a taking away from their salary. So you want to very clearly separate it from their week by week compensation, so they don't come to rely on it as part of their base compensation, but rather it is an additional payment that's coming from the organization to support them.
Commonly, so we have another that came from the Q&A, kind of connected to, this question of budgets, paying your ERG leads. So it says, we are discussing budget for our newly budding Black ERG. One of our members suggested we try to use internal speakers so we don't have to budget so much or at all for it. I agree with no unpaid labor, and I think the company would support paying someone to speak, whether internal or not. Any suggestions on how to?
Yeah, it is 1000% a statement of values and priorities. So they should pay the speakers. If it's an internal speaker, maybe you pay them with like a gift card or something like that. If you don't want to pay them cash. But an organization that's unwilling to pay for an external speaker, I'm going to come back to them and say, how committed are you to this? And I get, we have to make choices around money. We do at Holistic, every organization does. So I'm not blind to that. But these are 1000% organizational statements of values and priorities, and they need to be treated as such. And the employees shouldn't be looking for ways to let the company off the hook. They should be forcing the issue. And that's a big part of like why we're doing this event today, is we want to be part of the energy forcing these organizations to make these choices. When you commit to spending money on something organizationally, that means you care about it. There was a question in the Q&A that I answered in writing from, I think, I can't remember who asked it, Michael Pink maybe, about if you could get external funding to support ERGs. And I'm like, I don't want the external funding to support ERGs. I want the company to support ERGs, because I want the company to make that choice that we care about this so much that we're going to put money behind this. Should we move on to the third recommendation, Lise?
I think we had one other question, I think, if I understood it correctly, from Shep earlier, talking about like totally believe in, the no unpaid labor, but then this can, trigger this issue of people who aren't paid by salary, who are paid hourly, kind of moving into this overtime bucket. And, what's the balance, or how do you balance those things? So having clarity organizationally around who's involved in your ERG, and this is where that structure comes in, making determinations about, is there opportunity for allocation or protection of time? What are the operationally, like, these are the logistical things, walls that we're hitting. And so putting that back on leadership or your people potential or HR department who's making those determinations, and understanding too, something that we see a lot, the individuals who are working on our ERG, their work, whether they're a member or in leadership, is not always very visible to their actual people they report to, their directors, their supervisors, who might know they do something with DEI or do something, but not understanding. And so in the beginning, I was talking about, us at Holistic really leaning on data. So having that data, and we've done that for quite a few of our clients, and making this case running the data on how many hours are being billed to ERG leadership, and then coming with those numbers to have a recognition of, okay, we don't currently have allocation of protection of time. These individuals aren't currently being paid. How are we supposed to balance the scales for individuals who are in something like a project management role or certain consulting roles where they're expected to bill 40 hours a week to client work, right? So we can't just manifest and make these things up. What is the plan and what is the expectation? And those being very clearly delineated and set at the onset. Great questions, and I really appreciate them. So now we're going to move into the third, that collaboration is key. So ERGs really should be encouraged to collaborate with one another. This is one of the places where I have experienced the most rich conversations, the most vulnerability. When we have, people of color ERG and a pride ERG at an organization work cross-collaboratively to invite an invited guest speaker or to co-host a training or a panel. And it's a moment that is very, I think, impactful organizationally, because though ERGs, first and foremost are creating, community for their very specific, identifications. Any programming or anything that they put on communications are firm or company wide. And so this is an opportunity organizationally for other individuals who might not be able to actually identify with that, whichever demographic or whatever connection you have as an ERG, to get a deeper understanding into your lived experience, personally and professionally, and how the two of those are so hyper connected and have a lot of overlay. And it becomes a moment where, sometimes these conversations are, a place to share experiences that can be really hard and tough to hear, but we can get toward solutions-oriented conversation. We get toward awareness and education building. And those are the things that when you get them in front of your organization, that start to open eyes, ears, and minds and hearts. And those are the things that are going to lead to the verb of inclusion, of people showing up and going, wow, I know my colleague, Tom, from our work together in design, but I had no idea about his experience in XYZ way. And now that I have some of this awareness, I can kind of do some of that self-awareness work and tap in and think about, how might I show up? What are the things I could say or do? How could I be a champion or an ally to these individuals? And so it's so important to work cross-collaboratively as ERGs, and even simple things like many of the things you all are mentioning in the chat, the challenges that are faced by ERGs, the things, how do we get, we recognize that XYZ organization, the women's group, is so propelled. They've got so many folks that are interested and engaged and willing to, make light work with many hands. But in Pride, we're really suffering and struggling with whatever. Putting your heads together and trying to understand, like, what are the mechanisms and tools and things you all have used to help you build and help you expand and, get to those kind of goals. So the action item for this one is really setting up those periodic cross ERG meetings in which ERGs have a chance to present what they're working on, sharing their calendar, and even, working to plan a joint event. So one of my clients at Right Point, we call these the ERG roundtables, and we try to do these quarterly. And quarterly, we're able to, it serves a dual purpose. First and foremost, organizational leadership, that the executives that are tasked with driving DEI of the organization are a part of this conversation, as well as all leadership from every ERG. So this is that moment at the table where they're able to bend the ear of the people who are holding that bag for the budget, who are organizationally in a place to determine, can we create allocation and protection of time, as well as to cross collaboratively hear and see the things that their other ERGs colleagues kind of have coming down the pike. And there are so many great ideas that we find we can replicate for other ERGs.
Yeah, and this is the time of the year to do it. Can we go back to the slideshow? Possible? Whoever's presenting.
Also, while you're doing that, go ahead, Tom.
This is the time of the year to do it. One of the places where we've seen the most potential collaboration for ERGs is, can you press slideshow, whoever's presenting? One of the places we've seen the most collaboration for ERGs is around Pride Month. And I'm not really sure exactly the reason why. I mean, I think it's like summer, fun, celebrations, parades, colorful, like there's some vibe around Pride Month that I think really is fertile for collaboration from ERGs. And so we've seen, just sort of organically, a lot of cross ERG collaboration occur in support of Pride Month, which is great. And so now's the time to do that, right? If you want to set up one of these meetings, the purpose of the meeting should be, what can we all do to support our organization's Pride celebrations, which are literally 61 days from today. They're going to kick off. It's the perfect time to be exploring this. So let's move on to the next question, which is around the next topic, which is around measurement, I think. Oh, no, it's around term limits. So we think term limits are important for ERG leads. And the last one is, I think, the key one. And we've seen this happen so many times, that the reason that you turn over the leadership of an ERG is that an employee chose to leave your organization. That is really tough on the organization. First of all, anybody who's leading an ERG is a key employee of an organization. So you don't want to see that person leave ever. But secondly, having a void at the top of the ERG, in addition to having to fill that person's position, in addition to missing their energy for the organization, can be brutal to deal with. And we've seen like ERGs almost become, obsolete or decapitated with a leader leaving, where you're sort of like, kind of stunned to the point that you weren't really going to be able to rebuild it. And we had to kind of start from the ground zero with the organizations. And so the way to combat this is term limits. The other part of it is, I think that sometimes when we talk a lot about this, like volunteer, do I have to be the voice of DEI at my organization? A lot of ERG leads feel like they can't leave it. They feel like if they and that's a huge burden to carry on your shoulders. Like, I have to keep doing this because if I don't do it, nobody else will, or the organization won't take it seriously. And so what we want to work with these folks on is a term limit. You're going to be a leader of an ERG for a year, 18 months, 2 years, whatever it is. And at the end of that, you're going to be a part of the process to choose the next leader of the ERG. And it's so freeing. Now I have a concerted period of time where I can get done what I need to get done. It's not a lifetime appointment. It doesn't come with the burden of that. And more importantly, I don't feel like I'm solely responsible for this ERG persisting and continuing in perpetuity. And so our action item is, go to your ERG leads and just ask them, how long have you been in the role? First of all, my guess is a lot of you don't even know how long the people have been in the role. And then how long do you think you should be in the role? When would you think about turning it over? And there's a question from an anonymous attendee. What does the succession plan process look like? It's an excellent question. I think what we would do is we would say, you kind of invite folks to raise their hand that they might want to participate. You go through some sort of interview or evaluation process that you can define as an organization. And then you have like a month period where you kind of do the transition with that person. So we're at just a quick time check. This is a great discussion. We've got a zillion questions coming in. We have 5. And I think I just spoiled it. We actually have a 9th lesson that we're going to share. So we have 5 left. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to talk over the next issue, and we'll keep it moving.
All right, communication is critical with ERGs. So communication, for the same reasons that you think about how effective and important and impactful it is, just organizationally on teams, things like that. But really, when the case of ERGs, when we're talking about communication, ERGs should be given a vast ability to have great visibility and the platform company-wide. ERGs should not feel siloed, that they're only able to have the open, opportunity for connection and community and communication with those members for whom they represent, those that share those demographics, right? And it's an opportunity, as kind of we talked about before, when you get in front of the entire organization on the behalf of your group, you're able to help build awareness and education. The great, fuzzy feel-good moments of celebrating our cultures, right? How beautiful is it when we get on an all-company meeting and someone is telling a story that's really rich with their cultural experience or history, or doing a presentation around those heritage months or those days that really matter to them. But really, it's also because ERG members and ERG leadership are ambassadors for DEI internally and externally. So it's in the organization's best interest to give this mouthpiece. This is one last DEI message that PR, marketing, or anybody else has got to write organizationally. This is some of the best and brightest of an organization talking about how instrumental and central to their identity, who they are, how they identify is, and how that connects to the organizational impetus around driving diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so there are opportunities to not only internally showcase and give space for communication and amplification to ERGs and ERG members and leads, but externally too, right? So making sure that there are open lines of communication of membership to leadership specifically. So making sure there's an opportunity for listening, making them aware of any issues that might be faced from their respective communities organizationally. So this is a really good opportunity, and there should be an open door of communication, so that I think earlier I saw in one of the comments, like, how do we make sure that ERGs are not just a place to gossip or to vent or to complain or to whatever. Create an avenue for feedback so that there's not this concern by leadership that folks are in an ERG talking about how poor their experiences are as POC or women or any other group you have organizationally. If they have a mechanism for feedback to those people in leadership, those people in people potential or HR, they're going to understand how they can, what in fact they do feel that they're struggling with or up against, and what resources or support there might be or mechanisms there might be to move those conversations from what might need to be sometimes event session into solutions oriented, right? Into something that's going to, be palpable, and what kind of change or addition could we make here that's going to help not just the individuals in this ERG who've had a problematic experience potentially, but organizationally to help and show that we're driving inclusion for everyone. Advocating on behalf of the ERGs. Someone else said earlier, how do you get a chance in some of this if you don't have a seat at the table to be, do this decision making. ERGs require advocates. ERGs are not something that can be separate and siloed from, those people in positions of power and decision making in an organization, because then they are being treated as if they are a club. They're being treated with the same respect that you would treat someone who enjoys, brew making or soccer or whatever it is that brings you together. They're not getting that opportunity and that recognition that there's a need for this. Not just it's nice to have because an organization of a certain size who says they care about DEI should have ERGs, but there really hasn't been much understanding, purpose, and attention paid to what's the reason that you have ERGs first and foremost. Because ERGs, as much as now they are much more, they're sanctioned by an organization, and so they're well-resourced and they're for the good of the organization, the first and primary reason for ERGs is still in service to the employees and not to the organization. And until that's something that's clear on the table and discussed, then you're able to kind of make these moves where ERGs feel that they're empowered and they have an ear, at intervals to, have these conversations and be a part of decision-making and solutioning. And then, so really the action item for this one is to build some kind of protocol or procedure through which each ERG can gain that access to the company-wide platforms with this key information. So for many ERGs that I work with and advise, I know they do all company meeting takeovers, right? Tom talked about during Pride, it's Women's History Month. Just this past week, the women's, ERG took over an all company meeting. You have a slot, have a space, and that you have the captive attention for everyone, because one thing we know about a lot of DEI programming, ERG programming, it's opt-in. So you consistently see the same 40, 50 people who are coming and involved, and you're not getting that buy-in, and you're not getting in front of some of those hearts and minds that you might need to impact. But if you're able to get in front of the all company meeting, you're able to do that. The other thing that's great about that, at an all company meeting, there's usually the things on the agenda are talking about the business, revenue, new business, new clients, things like that. And so if the next bullet on that is now we're going to have, the people of color or the Pride ERG come, you're rising the profile of that ERG and their leadership and showing how important that is, that they're going to take over the slot of where you'd usually be giving a business update. So it's not always something that's separated.
Like an Instagram takeover, set it up today. Contact your social media people. Can we do an Instagram takeover sometime in the next month? Is an easy way of starting this process of making the platform available. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So we have a second poll. which what we're going to do is we're just going to invite you to share in the chat. What does success look like a year from now? Actually, we're going to not do this this poll here. We're going to just invite you to share in the chat. What are what would success look like a year from now? Throw your answer into the chat, and we'll be addressing them sort of after I kind of share the next recommendation that we have for ERGs, which is number 6, I believe, which is to use ERGs for recruiting. When you are, so everybody out there wants to diversify their team. This has been a huge area of focus for Holistic. It's a huge area across the business landscape. ERGs are without question your best recruiting tool to diversify your team. As soon as somebody applies, they should have direct access, or even becomes interested with your company. They should be given direct access to who your employee resource groups are, how they operate, how they might be involved. And we're going to go so far as to even say, offer the opportunity for them to meet some ERG members or leads as part of the interview process. So this action item that we have here is super powerful in terms of galvanizing interest in your ERGs. It's almost like you become a member of the ERG before you even got the job. It's a very, very powerful, opportunity for the organization to drive interest in the company and also to celebrate the ERG at the same time. So it makes a ton of sense. It's very easy to set up this kind of ERG interview concept, and we can talk with you about that. The other thing that we recommend is that if you have ERGs at your organization, they should have early access to internal postings. Send them to those groups, invite them to encourage their members to apply if they're interested, and also to share with their networks. It's a great practice. You talk about level the playing field. Give folks a direct opportunity at internal positions early is one of the quickest ways that you can seek to level the playing field in your workplace. So internally and externally, we see a ton of potential for attracting ERGs. We're seeing a lot of, there's a couple of comments here about statistics. So I'm obviously for that, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes when it comes to the measurement component of things. There's a couple of them around kind of people being able to meet the organizational promises, to share the budget, or to actually honor the budget that they promised and things like that, more resources. So those are, kind of traditional challenges for success. But one of the things we're going to talk about in a few minutes here is how to put some metrics behind that, so you ensure that it isn't just wishing, that we are going to meet those goals. So we'll move on to the 7th of our now 9 recommendations.
So this is really important too. A lot of the comments that we've had, can we go back to 7 things, have been around, how kind of like, if you have permission to do something, how do you get it approved? What's the case that you can make to get an outside speaker? What do you have to do? It's really important to empower your ERGs to be autonomous. Organizationally, while ERGs are something that we talked about a little bit before, an organization is going to help determine structure and requirements and expectations for ERGs. When we talk about the, hitting the ground running and the day-to-day activity and ownership and leadership of the ERGs, these are employee-founded and employee-led. And so people have to be operating in a realm of where they truly feel autonomous. First and foremost, with that focused on cultivating community and for those with that shared lived experience, but also when we have those expectations and structure set around how frequently should they be having events, what's the cadence of communication we expect from them, they will be more empowered to develop those things and initiatives and programming that best serves the interest of their group, as well as driving inclusion organizationally. So one of those action items we tell you for this one is to create a list of 3 things that ERGs have to get approval for, and 3 things that they can do on their own right now. Take one of the items for needs approval and move it to the autonomous list and see how that feels, right? So instead of operating in this way of, what can we do? What should we do? I'd say for that perfect example of, will we get the budget for this outside speaker? Could we? We know that leaders, when you approach them with, this is what the ask is. It's a lot harder for somebody to tell you you can't do something when you say, we've identified, we're a burgeoning group, we've identified this amazing speaker who we think can truly galvanize around what we're trying to do and will be an outstanding kickoff for our first programming. We've done the digging. This is what it would take logistically to bring them in. This is the speaker's fee. And as we're so new, we don't have a set up budget, but we sure hope we're putting this forward as that first ask. It's a lot harder for somebody to tell you no than for you to go, well, we don't know if we'll be allowed to bring anybody in. How much money do you think the speaker will cost? Do you think we can have that kind of money? It's the same way in anything else you all do as professionals, right? When you go to your boss with a question that you're unsure of, how much better is that landed and understood when you say, I've taken my best shot at it. I feel like I could use a little help or insight. What do you think? Versus, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. Can you guide me?
And, it's like, we have to have approval over speakers. I'm doing my company voice. We have to be in the approvals. Do you? What is the worst thing that's going to happen? Somebody's going to come in with some thought-provoking ideas that are going to challenge your employees. Like, you say you're doing that every day. Let the ERG make that choice. Let's move on to the 8th recommendation. This is my favorite one. Full disclosure around measurement. That's what holistic is all about. But measuring ERGs is just absolutely critical and contribution. And not enough companies do it. They don't even know how. So I've got a few measurement ideas here. These are just the tip of the iceberg. And so we're glad to talk to you more about different ways of doing that. First of all, just measurement of attendance at events, literally counting the people and keeping track of it. How many people came to our meeting? How many people came to our happy hour? Like, that little jubby jobby that at the club or the roller coaster where you like click every time somebody comes on? You need one for your ERG. That should be part of the budget. So that you can keep track of how many people are actually attending. Second one is you want to calculate the number of members of your ERG, however you define members, out of the total folks possible. So your company should, and you can work with the company to have an idea of how many sort of candidates for ERG membership you have. So let's say you have a parents ERG group and you have 30 parents out of 100 employees. And you have 15 parents who are members of the ERG group. That group is at 50% capacity, 15 out of 30. And we need to work to get as many of those parents interested in and involved in the parent ERG group as possible. I'm not talking about allies here. I'm talking about people whose lived experiences are central to the ERG, calculating their percentage. And then separately, there's a presence of allies percentage. So, we see groups where there's like 20 or 30% allies in the room supporting them. That means a lot, I think, organizationally, especially in combination with the aforementioned slide. So let's say that you have 20 Black employees out of 100 at your organization, and 19 of them are members of the Black employees ERG. You have 95% membership, which is outstanding. But you have another 10 employees organizationally who come to every meeting as allies. So now fully 33% of your ERG membership is allies. Your allyship percentage is off the charts. And you have full participation of your Black employees in your group. You're thriving in terms of membership. So when you go back to your leadership and you talk about what you're doing, now you have some really strong points for how you can kind of get this stuff going. We're going to talk to you a lot about membership coming out of this. So don't worry about if you're not kind of grasping this. Like, I'll stop whatever I'm doing to help explain to you how to calculate ERG statistics anytime you want to. And finally, we have one last bonus recommendation, which I'm going to turn over to Lisa to finish, and then we'll spend a couple of minutes talking about a free offer for you all and a quick thank you.
So lots of you have talked about, how do we kind of get this buy-in? How do we get leadership's attention? How do we get people to pay dividends on what they promised? This is your key right here. ERGs are the professional development opportunity you've been looking for. So it costs a lot of money for an organization and a lot of time and logistics to stand up a true professional development mechanism or arm or learning and development program for the next generation of leaders and the next generation of leaders. An ERG is the perfect breeding ground if they are taken seriously and recognized and well-resourced for this leadership opportunity. And ERG is a place where folks have to wrestle with these questions of how do we drive engagement? How do we get more people to come to our stuff? What is the message we want to put out there? How do we brand ourselves? How can we be the best opportunity, the best ambassador walking around out in the world for holistic, fill in the blank, whatever your organization is? Employees who are in this, even people who outside of the ERG in their day-to-day role do not have leadership capacity, they have an opportunity to lead without authority in an ERG. They might not have that title of director, manager, principal, whatever that is, but in an ERG, they're able to have great ideas, and when they're well-resourced and supported, able to drive those ideas and show how we can, level up our organization, how we can level up the culture. The number one thing that folks come to us about is employee engagement and experience, right? Related to DEI, but related to everything else. And what is the experience the employees having? We're in the Great Resignation. And ERG is a bastion, a place that should be on the very first page of any hiring initiative, any onboarding document, anything. The first thing a candidate should receive if you are to come to our organization. Let me tell you a little bit about the culture. These are the awesome ERGs we currently have founded, and these that we've had that because we've surveyed our folks that they have expressed interest in starting. And these are the amazing things, the 4 amazing things they did last year. They brought in this speaker, they did this, they had this community partnership. And those things are going to consistently raise the brand equity of the organization. So it's a win-win for them. It's also a great place where you can really grow those skills of self-advocacy and managing up. So the things that you're doing in an ERG that you're thinking that are totally divorced from your day-to-day role, no, if you can get executive leadership to get you that budget, to get this awesome speaker to celebrate and to galvanize the organization, then imagine what you could do for yourself in your own career day to day. If you're able to, with someone you have an even closer relationship with, whoever you directly report to. So we really think that this is an opportunity for you guys to take the action item of ERG participation should be a consideration in your company's performance review process. This is integral. So even for those who pay is not really on the table, allocation or protection of time have not come up. Earlier, when I was saying that many times somebody's direct supervisor has no idea of the amount of time, energy, effort, resources, blood, sweat, and tears go into leading, growing, and creating really engaging programming around an ERG, and it most certainly should. So whomever is kind of over that function, whether you report to somebody in people, whether you have somebody organizationally who kind of drives DEI, and that should come into consideration for raises, bonuses, any kind of specialty promotions. And if it's not, advocate for it, because that's one of those things that you can do for free tomorrow. And there are plenty of studies, and we'd be happy to send them to you on DEI best practices, on SHRM, on everybody's favorite. If it's not on HBR, it's not real, right? There are plenty of things that show how important it is, and we have a template to kind of help you on figuring out how that might be structured and what that might look like.
So that's it. Those are our 9 lessons. I feel like we've had a thriving open discussion. And I think we'll stick around for a couple of minutes here in a second if there's any additional questions. But in the meantime, there's a special offer for all of you who've participated in Really Anybody, which is we're offering a free 1-hour organizational ERG analysis and consultation. There's going to be a survey that comes out that you can fill in. You can email us at the links below. You'll get an analysis, like a data analysis and a written report of your ERG landscape, and you'll get a 1-hour consulting session with our team to help you think through your ERG challenges. And then we'll also promote what you're doing well and what you want to accomplish through our communications network. The Holistic Hype Machine is a wonderful engine. I think some of you have been subjected to our onslaught of communications to get you into this event, which we appreciate. And we're glad to turn that on for you. So in the meantime, I'll just end before I turn it over to Lisa to conclude by saying thanks for all that you all do for ERGs. This is incredibly important work. We're proud of you for making the space to do this. We're proud of you for continuing to fight for people within your organization and people within our society who need these groups. So keep it up. I know it's hard, but we're here to support you and we're excited about the future. Lisa?
Yes, I saw some great questions still coming through. If you had questions that we weren't able to get through, our emails are listed here at the bottom. Please feel free to email myself, Lisa at holisticindex.com. Happy to have a conversation, happy to, kind of help you. And, we want you to continue to, push and propel this stuff forward. And so if that means giving you a little pep talk, we're here to do it.
Have a great day, everybody. Appreciate you all
I want to
very
thank
much.
my colleagues for their help in running this. Thank you, Aaron and Khadijah as well.
Amazing people. Bye.